Alrighty, so thanks for coming. Today we'll talk about pre-finals prep, and so it's going to be a little bit of a workshop where we'll talk a little bit about preparing for finals and what that looks like, a little bit about what comes up when we prepare for finals and during finals, and some strategies. We have a few things here in mind that Logan and I are thinking about, and like we said, we can kind of personalize it, but lots of good options that we'll talk about today. If you have any questions or thoughts or things you want to interject, fully welcome you and encourage you to do so, whether it's through chatting or unmuting. Either way, we're happy to pause and do that and talk about it too. So today we'll talk a minute about what's worked. So like what works for us, what doesn't work, and how do we keep on those same tracks. We'll talk a little bit about understanding what this looks like a little bit more, about what research will show, and what stress looks like, and that anxiety or arousal level looks like when moving into tests or performances or whatever that is for us. We'll practice a lot. We'll get a few different practice sessions in of things that might be able to help. Look at things that help us prepare for this part of our times as students or our performers or whatever this looks like. So how do we get fully prepared for this as much as we can? We'll practice again, and then we'll have a little time at the end if there's anything additional or anything personal that you'd like to add in. Alrighty. So open up with just thinking about a time that you did well in an exam. So think about something that went really well, whether that's an exam or a quiz or what have you, that you did a good job. What are the things that you did during this time? And if you want to just think to yourself, if you would like to unmute or chat, you can definitely do that, but just something to be thinking about.
I can remember that I was able to, if I thought it would take me 3 hours, I multiplied that by 3, and that's how long it took me to actually really get it. And it was much longer than I wanted, but it worked, and I scored well. So that helped me, and definitely taking time to look over all the notes throughout the semester, like that I read all those notes after my class again, just so they were like already in my mind, and it wasn't just I was passively listening to my professor. So then that helped when exams did come, and I feel like I did that well enough during this semester. I hope I did. Yeah, that definitely helped me.
Okay. Awesome. So thinking about giving yourself ample time, it sounds like, and kind of like immediate processing as well as like the follow-up processing of like to hear it in a lecture, to hear it in a class, or to read it in a textbook, but then to just look at those cliff notes that you've taken can be 2 different ways of helping that register and stick in that memory. Sounds good. So now also think about a time maybe you didn't do so well on an exam or a quiz or some kind of project. What things did you do, or what things were done during this time?
I remember one quiz that I did horrible on. I didn't do good stress management in the beginning, and I didn't prepare like what you said, the immediate processing notes beforehand, like throughout the whole semester. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was tough quiz.
Okay. So maybe a mixture of, it sounds like you've had learning curves. So like you've gone through maybe not so good performances and felt, ooh, I think I might need to change something here. And so that sounds like you added in that piece of following up after classes or lectures to look back over. And then this idea of stress management, that definitely plays a really big part, both in like days and weeks leading up to something, but also like moments before or moments during. And Logan and I have talked a lot about what this looks like of how do we prepare people from what it does look like days and weeks before, but also in that exact moment. And stress can really take a huge toll on the process that we need for doing well and remembering and retaining that memory. Anything else you want to add in, Logan?
No, I think that's a great segue into what we're going to be going through. We're going to talk about these different practices of how to really tackle those things that we do have some control over, being how we prepare and how we respond to stress in that moment.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of stress, let's talk a little bit about the purpose of it, right? So all emotions provide us with information. Whenever we experience something, a lot of the times we try to put a label on it. This is a good emotion or a bad emotion. But in actuality, all emotions are important. Stress being one of those experiences that we feel throughout our entire body. And what stress is telling us is that, hey, there's something happening that I need to prepare for. So on a grand scale, like on a much more significant level, if we were to come across a bear and a bear is directly in front of us, our body is going to experience stress. Because why? Well, we're afraid of our lives. So when we experience that, what happens is our body takes that energy and puts it all into places that's important. So that's how we get our fight, flight, or freeze experience. Because we have to build all this adrenaline, all this blood's going to go away from our stomach and into our brain so we can think more clearly and more like in the moment. And that's telling us, hey, like there's something going on here, you got to prepare. On a much smaller scale, when we experience stress in our daily lives, it's usually telling us, hey, there's something going on. This could mean stress for a test, right? There's something going on that we feel this is important, so we're going to experience some sort of distress because we want to do well, and we know that there is some things that we have to do well. If we didn't experience stress about it, we wouldn't study. We wouldn't take any extra steps. We wouldn't be attending a workshop today because it doesn't have any importance. When we go overboard and we're experiencing too much stress, that's when it starts shutting down and we're feeling overwhelmed and we can't retain any new information. That's when we get into more of the bear zone. Like that's when our body takes over and says like, no, you're going to do this. But in that mid-range, there's something powerful that really happens here. And Brooke, I'm not sure, do we have a second slide to go through?
Yeah, this is where we're going to talk a minute about that middle ground. Exactly. And I found this clip because I feel like it's a nice way to break things up, but also it's nice to hear someone's perspective of how this looks. So kind of, yeah, as Logan was alluding to, there's a middle ground of stress. There's a middle ground of what we call arousal that is helpful. That's the most effective for performance or for test taking or for what have you. So we'll talk this. It's only about like maybe a minute and a half as the little segment that I chose here. Make sure, let me know if you can't hear it.
Okay.
Think about the anxiety you face during an exam.
I can hear it.
If your anxiety level is at an optimum balance, you'll be energized and focused and find yourself performing better by remembering the right answers to the questions. However, if you're over-anxious, you instead feel nervousness and exam anxiety, which would then hamper your ability to concentrate and remember the information you studied for the exam. So in summary, an increase in arousal to a certain level can help to boost performance. However, once the arousal crosses the optimal level, performance of the individual starts to diminish. This direct relationship between arousal and performance can be summarized by the following curve, also referred to as the inverted U model. The initial stage of the inverted U model, the curve, is the low arousal level. It's mainly associated with lack of sleep, lack of motivation, boredom, fatigue, and lower body temperature. Thus, our attentional mechanisms aren't really active and we are unproductive. As the arousal level increases towards the optimum level, so does attention and interest, and thus performance. Optimal arousal level is the condition of perfect balance where the individual isn't too aroused, neither under-aroused, and thus the performance is also optimum. This is the peak shown in the curve. At this point, the individual will feel energized and focused, with work feeling effortless. When the arousal level of an individual is past the optimum, tension levels rise up and arousal becomes excessive, causing performance to diminish. This level of arousal can be related to falling apart under pressure and is generally associated with panic, anxiety, burnout, lower concentration, and an inability to make decisions.
All right, so that was a super, super short little clip there of the inverted U. And so when looking at this and thinking about what we call arousal or anxiety, stress even can also kind of be lumped together in this idea. There's that low state where we don't feel super motivated, like Logan had said. Maybe we don't feel like that fire under our butts to get us moving and moving and trying to study and focus. That middle ground is where we do our best. We feel like mentally clear, we feel focused, we feel a little motivated. And then that top end where it's just too much. It becomes, our body and our brains are changing courses, focusing on different things. It's that stress can be just really overwhelming. So thinking about this curve, have you found yourself at times on either end and as well in the middle?
Yes, I definitely have been on the higher end these past couple years. I just actually got out of my counseling session. We're talking about these things exactly, and she referred me to this workshop because of like executive dysfunction issues and things like that. So I definitely can empathize with being on the higher end a lot of times. So yes, I've experienced that. Less so the lower end, more the higher. Yeah.
So what's awesome about that is that a lot of the times we can use our minds to essentially restructure the way we think about it. Because a lot of times when we do feel stressed, we do think it's a bad thing. We think, oh, this is terrible. But in actuality, getting stressed is a good thing. Like you're seeing it right here, that there's an optimal amount of stress that gets us to be at our best. And we can think about that when we think about stress, because again, we want to think of it as a negative, but in actuality, it is very much a positive. And saying I'm stressed not only because I care, but because it's giving me all of the energy, all of the nutrients, all of the blood flowing the way it needs to get me in a position to not only study, but to remember what I'm studying. And then when the time comes, to put myself in a position where I can focus directly on the task at hand. Because that's what stress does, is it gives us this tunnel vision into what we need to focus on. The issue we run into is when it starts leaning too far on the other end, and that tunnel vision goes into even further. And a lot of times we look at the mistakes that we make or the areas that we feel less confident about. And that's where we can only focus on that because our stress is so far over the optimal line. But with a little restructuring, we can bring it right back, reminding ourselves that this is a good thing. This is giving me the tools and the power that I need to do well.
Absolutely. And just thinking about this curve, knowing that you tend to fall more to the higher end, that higher like orangey red color, and there's a lot more strategies, or there's strategies on either end really to kind of increase the arousal. So like if you're in that yellowy part, I think about like athletes, and you think about like that stereotypical like scene before a game, and the coach is like getting them all pumped up, and they're like, yeah, and they're jumping around, and they're like, woo. That's one tactic for increasing arousal, like jumping around and yelling and getting active, having that camaraderie with other people. Those are ways to increase it. But for a lot of folks, they're coming in saying, I have way too much, like Logan said, like I'm getting way too tunnel visioned. I need to find a way to kind of see a bigger picture. So we'll talk a few more things today that are actually a little bit more geared towards the top end, I think. So that might be something that's a good moment to kind of focus on today with things that get us back to that green level where we want to be.
Brooke, I think we need to...
About the anxiety you face during.
Yep.
I think we need to get you recorded on doing a pump-up speech, like go not just for sports, but like a general human pump-up speech. I think that's got to be, that's next on the list.
Yes,
I would watch it,
fun.
Definitely.
like a human goodness pump up, like you are amazing, like you are gonna you are successful, you are so smart. Yeah, I mean, I can see it. I think we should put it on our YouTube channel too.
There you go.
And then we'll put you for the one that's like the calming, and you'll bring people back to the green functioning zone. So I think that's a perfect mix.
Look at that. Wonderful. You're witnessing it right here. This is what's happening.
Yep.
So this is more of a reiteration of where we're at, like talking about stress, talking about arousal, and where we get to.
Absolutely.
Again, it's just helpful to recognize, again, that there is a point that we can get that anxiety and stress is a good thing in many ways. And again, I reiterate this more and more because we are so pressured to think, if I'm experiencing stress, there's something wrong, when in actuality, it's not. So again, when you're sitting in front of that test, or it's the night before and you're studying, reminding yourself that I'm stressed because I care, and that stress is giving me the power to do what I need to do. And then we'll talk about what to do when it does become overwhelming and ways at getting at that. But yeah, Brooke, anything else you want to touch on?
Nope, I think we covered.
Cool. All right. So this is one of those, so we wanted to address different skills you can do both during moments of time, so moments of stress, as well as moments of like beforehand. And this one is probably one of my favorites because it's really easy to do and takes almost no time. It's called box breathing. And what you're going to do is, just like it says here, you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then hold for another 4 seconds. And the best part about this is that if you forget the seconds, that's completely fine. It doesn't have to be 4, 4, and 4. You can do 4, 4, and 8, 6, 7, and 14, 15. You know, it might be a little long to hold your breath that long, so I wouldn't suggest anything over that. But what this does is, again, it's going to lower that arousal. It's going to allow you to think more clearly in that moment. And after this would be a time that I remind myself that, all right, I'm in that optimal zone. Let's get myself back into that optimal zone. It's not too much, kind of pulling out a little bit. So let's just practice this. We're going to do this about 4 times and see what works for you. Usually I do in through the nose, out through the mouth. But if you're having congestion day, that can be difficult, though you can still go in through your mouth. I focus on diaphragmatic breathing, which is breathing in your stomach, your diaphragm. So an easy way to know if you're doing that is to have one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach. And when you breathe in, try to make the hand on your stomach go out farther than the hand on your chest. So really breathing in that stomach and pushing that hand out on your stomach. So let's get ready to do this. And again, this is not something you have to meditate with. It's not something you have to like get all prepared and calm with. Just when you're in the moment, we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. Ready? Go. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Hold for 4. And do it again. And again, if you forget the seconds, an easy way that I try to remember it is breathe out longer than you breathe in. Simple as that. That actually so engages your parasympathetic nervous system, which is all where the relaxing parts of your brain are, and it can help bring you down that arousal that if you're feeling like it's too much. How'd that feel?
Very relaxing, yes. I remember learning about box breathing just a couple weeks ago. So this is so ironic because I've been doing it like for the past couple weeks. I went to a mindfulness like lecture for my roommate's church, and they were talking about box breathing. Well, I didn't know the name of it, but this is what they were talking about, and yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't know the name of it either. I've been doing it and didn't know it was called box breathing until Brooke mentioned that it was. And I was like, oh, that thing, okay. So yeah, it's the whole idea, again, just bringing yourself back down, focusing on your breath, which helps you bring yourself back into the present moment, which can reduce the way that we sometimes extrapolate our stress, saying, oh, I'm going to fail this test. If I fail this test, I'm going to fail this class. If I fail this class, I'm going to fail my future. Like, we get into that mode where this is just a way to bring it back. Like, okay, it's just question 24. Like, let's bring it back. This is one question. But yeah.
Awesome. This one's beautiful because you could do this the night before you're trying to fall asleep. You can do it during the test, like Logan said. You can do it right before. Really, all times. This is probably a useful thing to. I take this moment and do a mini box breathing between like appointments during my day because I just get tired. I just run through things really quickly. So really, really useful in very practical ways. So we're going to talk a minute about just making sure that there's just specific pieces around how we adequately prepare, making sure that we can do box breathing and we can do all of these other things that are mental skills or stress management. But if we're not adequately preparing in various ways, then it's only going to get us so far. So we felt like it was just helpful that most people are doing most of these things, if not all of these things. It's just a helpful reminder to say, making sure that I am doing everything that I need to be doing. And if there's something that I, have not focused on as much, then it gives us a chance to get reminded. So my expectation is that you're probably going to be like, I'm doing a lot of these things really well, and I focus on this, which is great. So thinking about that like week to day before the test, or week 2 days before, putting things in perspective, this idea of like, is that stress getting so tunneled? I kind of think about like when we see horses like in the streets, like in the wintertime, and they're doing like carriage rides, they have those little blinder things on. I think stress can make us do that, where we can't see these bigger picture things in our life. So think about what else is happening in your life that's valuable, or that's going on that is rewarding. That sometimes the process of finals and test taking or performances can just become so overwhelming that we sometimes lose sight of other things that are happening. And just remembering the basics: eating, movement, sleep, doing things that you enjoy. So often I think finals week becomes such a labor for a lot of folks, because all of the things that we normally do to help us function, we stop doing, or we need those basic necessities to be able to retain memory and to be able to regurgitate memory. We have to be able to have adequate sleep and adequate nutrition in our bodies to help us function, right? If you think about needing our bodies and brains to function like a machine to do well in a test, we've got to put stuff into it like machines need. So all of these things are kind of those basics. We'll practice relaxation techniques. We've already done one, so check. Awesome. Like Logan said, belly breathing into that diaphragm. Imagery is a big one, and muscle relaxation. Those are some big pieces that help people bring down some of that arousal and the red that we've talked about. And that night before the test, getting a good night's sleep. And I would say even probably the night more than the night before. I think that leading up, there's even a lot of research that's saying just missing one night of at least the adequate sleep can sometimes have some big impacts on like intellectual and cognitive functioning. So thinking about that, I think if we have that time, I hope we do, I think we should try to budget for it. Logan has something that's for sleep if we get to it. So important there. And then day of, thinking about you're moving into the test or you're moving into the performance, making sure that you are adequately nourishing your body, whether that is putting what food needs to be in there, or nourishment needs to be in there, and avoiding caffeine or coffee or whatever that needs to happen if the jitters end up getting you into that red zone, right? I'm a huge coffee person, and when I get done with my coffee, I go to tea because I'm like, I don't want to feel too guilty from having too much coffee. But also recognizing in those big days where you have something that you're preparing for and there's stress there, that extra caffeine could boost you into some higher arousal than maybe what's already happening, right? So just be thoughtful of what you need or what your body may or may not need in those moments. Doing something relaxing. Maybe that's box breathing. Maybe that's, for some people, they distract. They're like, I get on TikTok or I get on Instagram and I just like take a moment to like look at something that's enjoyable. Whatever it is that might help you relax and de-stress for a moment can be really helpful to kind of lower that arousal right before. Being prepared, coming in positive, not going in too early or too late, talking with students that sometimes are last minute cramming or venting or maybe panicking, that can also add a lot of like potentially negative or more anxiety symptoms or things that are going on. That's not going to help us feel present and grounded and prepared, especially if you've done all of that work. It's just gonna change that mentality. And that pep talk, we'll talk actually a little bit about that, and creating a mantra for ourselves, which can be motivating because sometimes we need our own pep talk, and we need to be that person for ourselves if there's no one else that is around that maybe can give us that. And then find ways to calm, find ways to ground, find ways to relax. During of course, using the same strategies for test taking, and expect that, like Logan said, we're going to have stress and we are going to have anxiety. We've all had it since the semester has started, I'm guessing, and it's just waxed and waned, right? So that's a normal thing to experience that. I don't know if it's possible or even realistic to not have any, right? We're going to be functioning with some. So it's a matter of how do we make that productive? How do we take that to good use? So it's implementing some of those calming techniques during the exam. That can be breathing during an exam. It could be maybe taking a moment to stretch, getting up and taking a drink, whatever that needs to happen. Continue to use that self-talk and stay cool. When people start handing in that test, I know it's really easy to be like, oh my gosh, like how'd they get through that so fast? like, what am I doing? I'm struggling over here. And it gets really quickly can move into some of those feelings of doubt or worry or judgment. And that's something that's also not going to be helpful with all of the preparation that you've likely done. And then after the test, find ways to treat yourself, find ways to, do what you need to take care of yourself. You went through, what was probably days, hours, weeks of preparing and working hard and being dedicated. Sometimes it's good to get that reward for that, regardless of that outcome. For some folks, it's communicating afterward to make sure that they're still in touch with that professor or instructor, see if there's other things that are sometimes coming up at the very end of semester. Learn from the experience. And I think I definitely wanted to plug in the Student Learning Center here, because there's a lot of ways that they can help students with not only like pre-test prep, but also like you had said, I learned that I needed to add this extra practice or skill that I do after classes. They help folks make sure that they're learning and growing from each experience that is helpful or not helpful with how they performed. So a big way to, sometimes we're like, oh, that was terrible, I'm going to run away and never think about that again. Sometimes it's really helpful to think back and say, how do I make sure that I capitalize on what I did really well and adjust on the things that I think I could do better? And so that's a big piece to look back on. Okay, so last bit of today is just practicing again. And so what are you thinking, Logan, with which one you'd like to do? You want me to do the mantra, or do you want to do a sleep thing, or what are you thinking?
I think both will take just a few minutes each, so I think both will be helpful.
Okay. Would you like me to start, or would you like to?
After you.
Okay. So the first one is going to be that little mini pep talk mantra creation. I'll be honest, it took me a long time in my life to figure out how to do a mantra. So I think that everyone needs one, and I think it's useful to come up with one that's genuine to yourself and what works for you and what you believe in. So there's a few steps here, and so I'll walk us through it, and maybe Logan, I will do it myself again. But first, let's take a moment, and maybe I'll just give 30 seconds or a minute, depending on how much time we need, to think about your biggest accomplishments. So take a moment to think about it, write it down, note it in your head, whatever that is, and think about maybe 3, 4, 5 things that you have had in your life that have been successful. Anything from an accomplishment, an award, to achieving something, to doing something, completing something, anything that can be a big achievement or achievement for you. So I'll give you a moment to think about that. Okay, and once you have a few of those things, and you can always keep adding to this list, is I want you to look at all the things that you wrote down and rate them. So this idea of like, which ones really put that extra smile on your face, or which ones really stand out to you in terms of like, my heart lies here, or this one is what I dream about, or this is what I would, if I was going to brag on myself, this would be the one I would share with friends or to people around, right? So maybe star those, or somehow kind of point out maybe 1 or 2 of those that really stand out. And then I want you to think about those 1, 2, maybe 3 things that really, really are the big ones for you. And I want you to think about the essence of what those accomplishments were, or those big moments were for you. And try to condense it. Think about what it elicits emotionally for you, or even mentally for you. Can you condense it down to a word or 2? Ideally 1. And sometimes it's helpful to think about like, what qualities of myself did it take for me to get here? What did I do? And what about me helped this achievement happen? What did it take to have this accomplishment succeed? So think about how we might be able to condense that to just a word or 2. And when you have that word or two, think about that being your mantra. And it's going to maybe not encompass the whole memory. It may not paint the whole picture for you, but in your own heart and mind, you understand what that one word means. It means a lot. It probably means perseverance and dedication and hard work and loyalty, sacrifice, whatever these things are. And think about how we can use that one word in our daily practice. Maybe that's writing it at the top of that paper at your test and then erasing it at the end if you don't want your professor to see what you wrote down. I have put it on sticky notes in the place that I probably need it the most, whether that's on like a bathroom mirror or on a desk, in your laptop, whatever that is. So think about where can we put this? Can we put it in our phones? Do we need an alarm that comes off, that sets off at a certain part of the day and it's reminding us of our mantra? So definitely that last step is thinking about how do we implement this word in our lives that helps remind us of who we are and what we've done and what we're able to do. And so that's the mantra. Did anything stand out to anybody with that?
I really like that because the word I chose, like, it is like the essence of like, I would feel good to like write that on the top of a test, or like, I really like this. Thank you.
Good. All right.
I'm having trouble coming up with the word. I have the idea. I think I have like the words around it, but I think I need to go some searching for a word that feels right. Because right now, the words that are coming up for me are not fully encompassing what I want to. And some of them are a bit explicit too, so I don't think I could write that on the top of a test. I think that might get me some trouble.
Yeah, that's the thing about mantras, is that it could be an explicit, it could be, sometimes it's like a place, like, maybe it's like a home base. So it doesn't have to be anything like perseverance or whatever that word might be. That's a descriptor. It can be, yeah, I agree. I think I'm sifted through to maybe like almost that last step, and then I'm still like, I need to settle on something. But I'm glad that word came to you really easily, and that feels like a good click for you. So anyways, that's mantra creating, and it can just be redone, of course. But yeah, so I'll let Logan go into his sleep prep.
All right, last few minutes, we're going to focus on sleep. Why? Because, well, we all know sleep is important. One thing I want to touch on is that when we say a good night's sleep before, and you do the week before, that doesn't mean necessarily more sleep. In fact, we want to try to keep a relative consistency in how we sleep. So, if you are getting 6 hours every night, the night before a test is not the time to get 9. And if you're kind of 6, 7, and 8, kind of staying in that range. But that's why another reason why, if you are getting 6 hours, it's not the night to get 3 hours of sleep either. Now, with that being said, we all know that anxiety can really mess with our heads, especially when we put our head down on that pillow. And it can be sometimes when you're laying there thinking like, I know I have to go to sleep. I know I need a good night's sleep. Like, why can't I sleep? And it's that kind of experience that can be very difficult to overcome without a plan. So today we're going to talk about, it's a play off of progressive muscle relaxation, but we do it when we sleep. So if you will, close your eyes and imagine you're laying in your bed. Now, we're going to go through a process, and we're going to work from our toes all the way up to our face, essentially to our head on the pillow. So starting with your toes, think about how you lay when you sleep, whether it's on your side, your back, your stomach. And we're going to start with our feet. And I just want you to feel your foot, whatever one's, right into that mattress. I want you to feel it sink deeper into that mattress. And then we're going to go step by step. Feel your ankle bone. Just feel whatever part's touching that mattress. Feel it just hit the bottom of that mattress and kind of push through it. Maybe your calf is next, or your knee. And just feel those parts of your body just sink deeper. We're going to move up to the thigh, to the hip or to the rear, to kind of your trunk, your core area. Maybe it's your shoulder or your shoulder blades or your back. And then, where's your neck? Is your neck nuzzled in with a pillow? Is it kind of on its own? And then feel your chin or your ear or your cheek. And again, every step of the way, feel yourself sinking deeper into your mattress and pillow. And so we went through that relatively quickly. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes. In actuality, you can go that quickly if it makes sense. but you can also take your time and really feel it out. Like, okay, maybe you start with your pinky toe, and like, okay, your pinky toe is the first thing you feel in the mattress, and just slowly moving upwards of your body, feeling yourself literally sink deeper into that pillow, mattress, blanket, whatever it is, and going step by step. And then breathing, this is where your box breathing can come in, just kind of, again, that diaphragmatic breathing while you're doing it. And what that does is it kind of, in the same way that like counting sheep will take your mind off of, like, put your mind off of the anxiety, this actually brings your body into it as well. And I find this to be the best practice when you really have nothing, like you can't fall asleep. This is what you do. But that's just one. There's 100 other ways. If you've never used the Calm app can be very helpful as well. CALM. There are also many sleep meditations through the Insight Timer app, INSIGHT Timer. That one's my favorite. They have a section just for sleep where they can do music or mantras and a lot of different things. But that's probably my most favorite, is the muscle relaxation into the actual mattress. And then if you can do your best to not study in bed, to not eat in bed, especially the week before, like, try to make bed just for sleeping. Unless you watch TV to go to sleep, that's fine too. But trying to keep the screens out of your bed, as well as food, as well as the studying stuff. But yeah, that's actually shown to be more helpful after studying to get a full night's sleep. You actually retain more information than you would if you tried to cram the morning of. So, kind of threw that all at you in the last minute there. Any questions?
No, I don't think so. What the muscle relaxation, what was that called again?
I don't know if it has a name, actually.
Oh, okay, just muscle relaxation. Okay.
So there's a specific kind of muscle relaxation called progressive muscle relaxation.
Oh, okay.
So progressive meaning like step by step relaxing. But that one is a bit different for when you're not sleeping. But
Okay.
this is just a way, again, just thinking about relaxing your muscles one at a time as they fall deeper into your, again, mattress, pillow, whatever.
Okay. Thank you. That was very helpful. I'm definitely going to use that.
Well, a lot of little tips and tricks, and it's good to know that sleeping on my books is not helping me retain any memory. Wish that worked. So that's a few things for today. We are bringing different practice strategies every day that we're doing this over the lunch hour. So we have tomorrow and Thursday. So just keeping that in mind, if you are interested, or if other people watching or that you know of that might be interested in just gaining more strategies, we'll be adding in new ones each time. So with thinking about that, any questions or thoughts or things specifically that you would want to spend any time with today?
For the like Yerkes-Dawson, I hope I said that right. Yes. Because I know people say there's different ways to retain the knowledge as you're studying, but some methods make me more stressed. So is there something that could work like hand in hand with stress relief or stress release, as well as retaining the knowledge, if that makes sense? Yeah.
I mean, I know of one it's not a like foolproof, but olfactory memory is a thing. So if
Okay.
anytime that you smell something and that smell takes you back to a memory as a child, maybe it smelled like something a grandparent would cook or something like that. So that process is very real, and you can actually influence that process. So having a certain smell while you're studying. So when you think of relaxing, like a lavender or a peppermint or a eucalyptus smell, whether it's essential oils, it could be gum, it could be a perfume or air freshener, something like that. And then what's nice about kind of taking all these tests at home is that you can recreate that smell for yourself in the testing environment. So
okay.
One thing I know that's a common practice is chewing peppermint gum when you're studying, and then chewing the piece when you're taking the test.
Okay. Yeah, that would definitely help. Thank you.
That was the only thing I was going to add to. It wasn't
Yeah.
sensory specific, but research says like if you're smelling similar things while studying and then smelling them at the test, it helps retain or it helps regurgitate it back. I was going to say like in that whole essence of like studying in the way that you're taking that exam. So it's along the same line. So you add in sensory pieces can be really helpful. And like thinking about like Logan said, if we're studying on a comfy bed, laying down, that's going to feel and look very different in our brains and in our bodies than it is if you're sitting upright at a desk looking at a laptop, right? Or like doing it upright, seated, you know, thinking about doing it in the same time that you're likely taking that exam. So all of these different components of essentially trying to mimic as much as you can what that moment will look like for the performance or the test taking or whatever that is, and trying to implement those pieces into your studying is going to be the best way that your brain is like, okay, this makes sense to me. I did it this way. I can do it again exactly this way again.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, we so appreciate that you came, and I'm so glad that someone encouraged this. It's kind of like we're all on the same team together, and we're totally like supporting one another.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that willingness. And so if you at all feel interested, if you want to scan that QR code just to give us your thoughts and feedback, it would be so helpful for us.
Okay.
But regardless, we're so thankful that you came, and hopefully it was helpful and you're walking away with something into the next few days.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you. And did you say the next couple days they're going to be like new tips?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
So the beginning will be the same, correct?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be that second half that will be talking about like different techniques that we'll be using. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Best of luck to you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye. All right, I'm going to turn off recording.